welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens fell to the Steelers 18-16 in a game that can be put no other way than classic Raven Steelers. Throw out the record books, throw out everything you know about the teams, and just watch two AFC North teams play very physically and see what happens. So, Peter, we were watching the game together. How'd you feel?
Frustrated, man. You know, it's incredible. The Steelers, it's something ridiculous. Like, they're 8-1 against the Ravens in the past, nine matchups. It's incredible how this even matchup has become so one-sided, even despite the fact that the Ravens have the better record over the past several seasons. Divisional football games are weird. I think that this was a game that both teams played pretty much equal. Whatever you want to, give a grade on their effort and execution, just came down to turnovers and missed field goals. And unfortunately, the Ravens committed more in both categories and came out with a close loss.
Derek, did you watch the game?
So I had it on Red Zone. So no, I saw very little of it
because they were never in the red zone.
I mean, I just think it's funny. It's the second time the Steelers have won this season with 18 points and no touchdowns.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking at when they played the Giants had 18 points. Like 18 points doesn't happen that much. And Steelers this year chalk a team up for 18 points. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's AFC North football. Is you think it's going to be different and then it's not. It's just that kind of game.
To address the Derek in the room, Derek's joining us this week because Chris couldn't make it. Too busy being a birthday boy and all that jazz. And he's our resident Chargers fan, air quotes. Because
I was also here as the Cowboys fan.
Right.
And now that season's gone so well that
he's
I'm wearing a Chargers hat now.
Yeah. He's kind of anti-fan, but also like acknowledged there's no real Charger fan, so he might as well be a non-real Charger fan with them.
Yeah, I can be the one that exists. I mean, during the Bengals game last night, you could hear the Who Dey chant better than you could hear any Chargers.
Dude, they
fans,
traveled so well. That was crazy. Yeah.
It's easy when all the tickets are available. So I mean, that's. But yeah, last time I was here, it was when the Ravens played the Cowboys, and they were coming off a loss, and they got a win. So maybe I'm good luck for the Ravens. We'll see.
Could be.
We'll see. Could take all the good luck we can get after that game.
Well, I kind of broke it up into 6 topics, so to speak, and Peter alluded to it at the jump. I think it's like the biggest topic, right? Very difficult to win a game where you have so many miscues. So there were 3 turnovers. I think they were all fumbles personally, but they're calling the one to Justice Hill an interception. Second play of the game, we already knew we were in for. Derrick Henry fumbles. Gives them the ball at the Baltimore 42. Then there were 2 consecutive missed field goals by Tucker, and then they got the ball back at the Pittsburgh 37 and 40th, respectively. Then the real backbreaker was the likely fumble with 29 seconds to go at the Baltimore 19, able to get one more dinky little field goal. And then, of course, the interception / fumble by Hill that gave them the ball at the Pittsburgh 36. So what we saw was a lot of scoring opportunities squandered, like drive squandered, really good field position given, and Boswell just not missing, right? I don't see how the Ravens lose the game, basically, if any of those things didn't happen. However, they all did. And, that's one of those fun things of football, like, obviously, the game changes when different things happen. Your approach to the game changes, but it really comes down to high leverage plays, and those were 5 of them that really defined the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we got to give the Steelers credit. Like, the plays that they made were good defensive plays, particularly that fumble, interception, whatever you want to call it. It was an interception in the scorebooks. I mean, that was an incredible throw by Lamar, an incredible effort there by Justice Hill, and the Steelers was just still able to rip that ball away and just completing the play, never giving up. They did a great job of containing Lamar, I feel like, when he was trying to do the scramble drill. Maybe not so much containing Lamar as making sure, what the Ravens like to do and have the receivers, come back and just take away those options for him. You could tell Lamar was taking more time back in the pocket, looking downfield for guys. Just wasn't really anyone open most of the time. Got to credit Mike Tomlin, man. He knows how to stop Lamar Jackson, and it's going to be that way until one of these days they'll crack the egg. The coaching staff will, and they'll figure it out. But unfortunately, here we are yet again, another game where Lamar Jackson started against the Steelers, and we're talking about what could have gone better.
Yeah, I guess before we break into the defense side of the ball, I think it's worthwhile to talk about the Tucker missed field goals, right? So he misses a 47 and the 50-yarder back to back. Confidence is waning, right? Wide left like they've all been. And then he goes and just drills a 54-yarder, right? So it's very mercurial play from a guy that used to be a bathroom break, inciting, right? And I went ahead and started looking at some of the stats, and it's a really interesting place the Ravens find themselves in. So Tucker is 72.7% on field goals this year, which is 37th in the league. Now, granted, I didn't filter out people who barely qualify that had a couple kicks. They were all, of course, like the people that had a couple kicks are all like at 100%. But I think the more telling stat, there's only 4 people behind him. And they were all like high volume-ish kickers. So now the Ravens are facing what it's like to have a like real kicking team rather than like the spoiled franchise we've been, where anything under 45 Stover was hitting. Cundiff was pretty good until he wasn't. And then, of course, Tucker's amazing career. And I thought last year his inconsistencies at least was like something we could understand. It's like, okay, after 50, you're playing with fire a little bit, but anything under, you felt pretty good about. Now it's like, I don't know what's good and what's not. And it's much more of a dice roll. And it was brought up in the press conference today, and I think it's very valid of like, okay, like first of all, you can't just like cut the guy, right? There's a bunch of teams, NFL teams, that would immediately pick him up because kicking's a problem in the whole NFL. It's not like everyone's perfect. We just saw Moody. We saw McPherson miss last night. We saw Young Hoku. He's missed a bunch of kicks in a game before. So it's like, it's not like uncommon. It's just like absolutely painful to see, particularly in such a close game. And like, who's the competition, right? Like kind of going back to, like, you have to find the next diamond in the rough to really like legitimately ever pick that up. So like, obviously you're riding with Tucker at this point. I have no idea what they'll do in the future, but I think this year it's like very clear you're riding with Tucker. You're hoping that he finds his form again. And like, it's just something to monitor. I don't know when the calculus changes though for the Ravens, and maybe it already has internally, where you're like, okay, it's 4th and 3 from the 37. Are we going for it? Like, what's more likely at this point? Because I feel like that's a reasonable question to ask. I don't know what your thoughts are, Peter.
Well, I feel like we had this whole conversation last time Derek was on, once again.
Yeah.
Bringing it back.
Yeah.
Because that was after the game against Dallas, where the whole reason that game was even close, right, was that, he lined up for some kick in the mid 40-yard range. I don't remember exactly the length, but yeah, hooked it left. And that was after the misses in the first 2 weeks leading into that. And, it's something that the reality of what this is this an aging player? There's no doubt in my mind that some of this has to be physical. Justin Tucker has been in the league for quite some time, and I just think we just don't think of him as a player who's getting up there in age, just because he's just never showed in his career any type of struggle. I mean, there was a little bit of this in 2015, his third year in the league. He was starting to miss some kicks, again, from distance, like we're seeing here. But then after that, he was just locked in and just for a full decade, the best kicker in the entire league. And, what I think the Ravens need to continue to keep in the back of their mind is, back in like 2016, 2017, even 2013, there were some offenses that, weren't going to score touchdowns, week in and week out. You needed Justin Tucker to make those kicks, or else you weren't scoring points. I mean, this game was 18-16. 11 years ago, we had a game where the Ravens won 18-16 on a Justin Tucker 61-yard field goal against Detroit. right?
Yeah.
What I will say about Tucker, every kick matters, obviously, but I feel like while he hasn't had that many opportunities, he's made every clutch field goal he's needed to make this year, right? He made the field goal against Cincinnati. He made this 54-yarder in this game when we absolutely needed it. He hasn't had many opportunities this year to make the clutch kick, but every time he has been called upon, he has made it. So I think what the Ravens need to look at is just you're going to continue to need to emphasize getting into third and short situations. You get yourself in third and short, you have two opportunities to get a first, right? Assuming you don't lose a lot of yards on the third down play. And that's just what is going to have to be the mentality is they're going to need to have an aggressive mentality rather than, falling back on Tucker. They have the guys to do it, but it didn't work against Pittsburgh. And then I think you also have to wonder mentally, how does that gel with the team, right? So I don't know. It's eventually players age, even the best, and that might be what's happening here. And the Ravens are just going to need to have to adjust, just like you adjust when Marshall Yonda gets older or when Ed Reed gets older, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it is possible. I mean, like if he finishes out the rest of the season and doesn't miss another kick, I know 6 games, that's a lot to ask, but he'll have missed one more field goal than he missed last year and the same amount he missed the year before. So it could, and all of his misses so far this year have been beyond 40. He hasn't missed any within 40. I think it might just be a little jarring to see him to see the cracks, and that's making it feel maybe a little worse than it is. He also had some comments about the field conditions. I don't know how much to read into that. He was having trouble getting his footing, and that stadium's historically been difficult to kind of judge the wind, especially kicking. And I know one of the end zones is like open,
the lakeside. Yeah,
and were both of those kicks in the same quarter? Were they both kicking the same direction? I can't remember.
I think they both were kicked in the same direction. Yeah, because then when the field flipped and Boswell hit another long kick, it was in that corner, and people were like, "Dang,"
Yeah.
And I think it was the hard side for what it's worth. I wanted to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that was.
Yeah, I mean, but he's still 35. That's still getting up there for any NFL player. I think Alec, you hit it right where it's going to start to affect the team is when you're at the 37. Maybe it changes the calculus on whether or not you go for it or kick it. Depending on the down and distance, maybe 4th and 5 from the 37, you're going for it now, which I think teams should do more of anyway. So
exactly.
So maybe it's this is why it's good for the Ravens that Justin Tucker is getting work.
Right. Love that callback. I am annoyed. Like when I was watching the Chargers game, I was like, it was 4th and 1 or whatever right before the end of the half, and they kicked the field goal like suckers. And I was like, I get taking the points, but like you're on the 1-yard line. It shouldn't change anything because there's only 1 second. Like just go for it. Like I feel like it was because of the time that they kicked the field goal, not because of the math,
Which I give him a little more slack for that. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like you're giving up the ball there either way. It doesn't really. I guess you don't get the benefit of an end zone penalty.
No mercy in this dojo.
Yeah,
all the numbers. No.
Yeah. I will say though, one thing Alex said that I had to put immediate pushback on: Tucker's not getting cut this year.
No. I'm not saying he's going to get cut. I was just saying as an option set. No, he's not getting cut. I'm saying if you cut him, like it's kind of a non-starter.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
And I think you even followed it up with there's no way they'll find anyone better than even a Tucker Light, if that's what
you wouldn't know, right? Like this is an experience. I would be shocked if they don't bring competition during the summer, right? Like I think that's a non-starter at this point. You got to bring in competition just for
Sure.
Like no, I
have to talk to Derek about this. Alec loves to talk about future stuff when we're still in the season, and I'm just like I just tune out. And Chris isn't here to hold this conversation with Alec, so I'm just gonna it'll just be Alec talking to himself unless Derek wants to.
Yeah, maybe there won't be football next year. No one knows for sure. Anyways, The Steelers defense, man, like kind of going back, they played so cohesively as a group. One of my notes was, and even the broadcast was saying, which I thought was kind of interesting, is Lamar's been so incredible at like extending plays and finding something and either getting a penalty or, again, finding someone downfield and not taking the easy stuff. Like there's a couple times you could have checked it down and he just like keeps extending and throws it downfield. I don't know if that's the best idea against a good defense like this, right? And we kind of talked about going into this game that the Pittsburgh defense was the toughest defense that they've been playing, even better than the Broncos defense, and what challenges would that bring. And I think that was the number one thing that it brought, frankly, is that when Lamar was trying to extend a play and keep looking, like there's a couple times we could have taken like a 5-yard, guy and maybe get some yak and live to see another down, or like make a better, distance. He would look and look, and then he gets sacked or like, run out of bounds or whatever the heck happened. Right. So I think that is a big challenge going forward and something to think about. Cause I don't want to be Eddie Jackson on the sideline being like, throw it away. Never mind. Be you. Right. Like, I don't want to be that guy and tell Lamar how to do his thing. But I do think it's an interesting question for the coaching staff, which, man, Harbaugh, by the way, is dealing with so many things this year between the Tucker thing and some other things we'll talk about later. Like there's so much going on in this, clubhouse, so to speak. Kudos to him for keeping it all together. If he is, I don't know, right? Like that's another question. But I just think that the Steelers defense was as advertised. Herbig was super disruptive with the forced fumble and other big impact plays. Joey Porter gets hurt, and then the guy who fills in for him is one who gets the pick fumble, whatever you want to call it. Just huge defensive plays made by the Steelers throughout the game.
I mean, that's the thing about the Steelers, man. Every year they've got a defense, right? Whether or not they have the offense, they've got the defense. And yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I push back a bit though, because I think that I think Lamar had a good balance. There were certainly times he took the check down. There were a couple completions to Bateman like that. There was a couple times I'd say, the crosser he hit Andrews on was taking the simple thing there. Should he have done it more? I mean, maybe, but also at the same time, I think that Lamar was pretty much the same Lamar he's been all year. It's just, more so the receivers just weren't getting the ball. They had drops in here yet again. Another interception off someone's hands. I didn't have too much of a problem with how Lamar played. I think he played good enough football to win. And I mean, I think against a good defense, those plays aren't going to come as much, but even those simple things aren't going to have as high of a success rate either against a good defense too. So it's kind of, I think you're weighing both, and balance is probably the best, to keep the defense off. And I think the Ravens did it. Just the turnovers made it not matter.
It may have been a game flow issue, but I'm looking now. Derrick Henry had 13 touches in the whole game, which feels low for that kind of like low scoring game. But I mean, the way they were turning the ball over, I don't know if like they just didn't have many extended possessions or not. And that would account for it. But Lamar threw the ball 33 times, that seems like a lot for what they normally do. So yeah, it's a weird. I mean, I obviously didn't watch. I didn't watch every play of the game or like really feel the flow of the game. But it looking back at the stats, that just doesn't really feel like the type of football that would have, won that game for them. To me, looking at it now.
Yeah, it was another instance I felt of the Ravens letting the opposing team dictate their game plan. For a team that was never down by many points, because as we all know, they kicked 6 field goals, right? They did not smell the end zone. They definitely felt like they were chasing a bit. I don't know. I got that vibe of them trying to chase, and they didn't stay ahead of the sticks. There was a lot of penalties that were brutal that we'll talk about soon. I just think that I think the steal your line, Derek, like Lamar had been playing like, above like 100%, right? He's been like playing so stinking well for so long. I think it was covering up a lot of problems, obviously. And then he has a more like normal game for the first time in a while. And suddenly like everything looks broken, right? I do think though a part of it was just like they did not lean on Henry much. I do think that was kind of curious. I didn't feel like Henry was like held up particularly well. Like I think he was doing normal Henry things where it's, gets the yards that are there a little bit more and then breaks something, and it looks so scary in the, open field. But yeah, they were passing a lot, man. And they also like just didn't really use the Lamar run except at the worst possible time and the worst possible play. So like they just like, I don't know. It's weird. Like part of me is like, are they gonna like fire these shots eventually? Like, is it a playoff thing where they like want to run Lamar more and like use like to be like full 100 of the offense? Like clearly they're holding back a little bit, right? You would run Lamar more if you cared like about winning every game, I think personally. But like, yeah, it is weird that Henry didn't get more touches, and that was a topic for the 2-point conversion.
It does make sense if they're playing behind the sticks that he would end up with fewer, especially with the penalties and stuff. And he probably had some carries wiped out due to penalties as well. So the box score may be lying a little bit there.
Well, it's also interesting. I think 2 points there. What's fascinating about Henry right now is he's been efficient, right? So it seems like he didn't get that many touches, but if we look at the previous 4 games, he only got 20 plus carries one game, and that was against Denver. 15 carries for 169 yards against Tampa Bay, 73 yards on 11 carries against Cleveland, 68 for 16. So, I mean, 3 of his last 4 games, I mean, he hasn't broken 75 yards. The Ravens have had a little more of a passing attack going on here. Still averaging 6 yards per carry on 197 carries. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there was a period here, if we look at starting at Dallas and going into Washington, where he had 24 plus carries in 3 of those 4 games. And I think that's kind of where we're getting the idea of what a Derrick Henry is in this offense, because there was that pocket where the Ravens are starting to have success finally after the losing those 2 games, and then they're riding Henry a lot. But then since the Washington game, only 1 game with over 16 carries for Henry in a 5-game stretch. So,
and that could be a load management thing. I mean, once they were a little more secure and that this was going to be a playoff season, I could also see tapering down a little bit.
I could also see that being why Lamar's running less, because I think it was after the Cleveland game he showed up on the injury report, right? He's
poking around on the injury report for a while too, So it wouldn't be surprising if there's something, something's lingering and they're trying to like let it heal as much as they can in season, kind of thing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I also think that makes a lot of sense.
And I do think that Lamar is at the point now, and this offense is at the point now, despite the struggles this past week. Most games, I don't think he needs to run a lot. I don't. I think so. Yeah. Running in opportune times, like you're saying, it keeps the defense honest, and then that allows for plays like what they did against Cincinnati, the fake rollout that ended up being, you had Mark Andrews and Nelly completely wide open in the end zone, no Bengals anywhere near him. That allows you to still run that play, but with the emergence of Bateman, who has taken a little bit of a backseat after his we all crowned him as finally living up to his first round status in the Bucks game, and then he went back to being Bateman, but you got Nelly now, and Tylan Wallace making plays, Andrews likely. There's so many receiving options here that are at worst league average to borderline all pro in Zay Flowers. Derek's going to push back on that, but
I think his face was pushing the ball back yesterday. So.
That's true. Yeah. Yesterday was not
tough,
today's game.
But it speaks to what you guys are saying. They made too many mistakes, and even with all of that, like they're a better 2-point conversion play call away from taking that game to overtime. So like you can't. I mean, you got to at least like feel good about the fact that you can play your worst game of the season against the first place team in your division, and you're still like a play away from.
Yeah. Ravens haven't lost any game by any meaningful amount. It's always been these conversations of like, if any of these 7 things went right, like probably they win the game. I will say, like, and they always include a Tucker missed field goal. That's a fun fact. Hate that for us. If Tucker misses a field goal in a game, it's a bad omen. It's like, anyways, I just think one of the big things too that we kind of talk about with Lamar running is he's scrambling less, which kind of goes to like the whole. He's trying to extend the play, trying to find somebody downfield, and it's been working really well. It seems fine, but there was definitely a couple times in that game if he just took off, like he would have gotten the first down, and then they had fresh out of downs, and things could have happened, but instead, like it was 3rd and long, and doesn't happen, right? So, I guess like the next thing I want to talk about was the penalties. Like we were saying, there are a lot of penalties. A lot of them were on screens where the illegal man downfield happened. Really painful to see. Like the screens were getting blocked up well. What an interesting like problem, right, with running the screens. Like a negative thing that people don't talk about as much is like the possibility of the penalty is quite high.
It's the same with the RPOs. You got to worry about that every time with those.
There's also the possibility of a fumble if you're just gonna la-di-da the ball back there to your number one wide receiver, and he's gonna just forget that the football's coming at him.
Yeah, there's options. There's there's lots of things that can happen.
Many ways things can go wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the penalties, though, man, I did a little study. It's not pretty. So the Ravens are first in the league for penalties per game at 8.36. The next closest team who has played 11 games is at 7. 92 penalties this year for 763 yards, which is 69.36 per game, which is also the most in the league. The next closest team is 63 yards per game. Fun fact, KC is second fewest at 5.1 penalties a game. Fun fact number 2, disproportionately, not pre-snap. The Ravens are actually in the bottom quarter of the league in pre-snap penalties. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. And I found on the note of penalties that the Ravens are 5th in first downs given up by penalty on defense.
Nice.
27 times they've given up a first down via penalty.
Wow. Quick math says that's like 2 times a game. Yeah, that's not great, obviously. And this is the number one thing that they were talking about is killing the offensive momentum and the drives in this game, which, I mean, makes sense. Honestly, offensive penalties are always pretty killer. Holding penalties are almost a death nail to a drive. Offensive pass interference is bad, obviously. Legal man downfield, false starts, like they're all really challenging, but the holdings are like really bad. And they're just not doing well in that category. McCary's been getting penalized a lot lately. I don't know what to do with him. Like I think it's really hurting the Ravens at this point, but the options are not clear. If they want to go back to the rookie or the pseudo rookie and Voorhees, they want to go to Jones, they want to, undog house Cleveland. Like none of these things sound possible or maybe even that great of options. So it's kind of a Tucker like situation where you're like, I don't know, I guess we'll just keep rolling, and but the penalties continue to be a problem and it just is unacceptable. I mean, they had special teams penalties. Those shouldn't happen. Harbaugh said as much. Like he's like, it's all techniques and geometry. Like they should never happen. Blah blah blah. And yeah, it's painful, man. And I hope they clean this up because A, obviously it's hurting the team, but B, it's just embarrassing, frankly. Like I don't know. Penalties are like the worst thing to do. I imagine the team feels that way as well, for what it's worth. But like it's just one of those things where you're like, man, like play better. Like I thought the Chiefs stats like so telling. Like they don't make those problems, or they get paid off. Whatever you want to believe.
I thought you were going tinfoil hat there with with that fun fact.
Oh man, I was about to pull mine out for this segment. Yeah, I mean that comes down to coaching, right? It's not really something we could really dissect here, I guess, from an X's and O's standpoint. I think that it's. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about it beyond that. I will say, though, I'm surprised that you mentioned the the Ravens starting Ben Cleveland as a possibility to a fix in the solution before you mentioned the Ravens trading for Laramie Tunsil from the Texans and having him play left guard, because I feel like that has a more likely chance of happening than Cleveland ever getting a start again in a Ravens
uniform.
Trade
deadline, no?
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's how unlikely it is that Ben Cleveland ever starts a game for the Ravens. They'll throw Jordan Stout out there at left guard if they have no one else to before they put Ben Cleveland out there.
Hey, man, he's so close. He was a sixth lineman and he had a great block.
That's not a start, though. That's just one play.
I know, but I'm saying he has a role, man. Maybe he will have a start if we come out in a heavy set, right?
Plays one play the game, gets a start if it's the first play.
Yeah, that would be the funniest troll of all time.
I think the solution to this is Harbaugh needs to go to the competition committee in the offseason to make offensive holding a 5-yard penalty, because it's egregious that it's a 10-yard penalty. Like, it's just it really like ruins the game to me. Make it a loss of down 5-yard penalty.
Ooh,
that would be my
that's
official recommendation.
That's spicy. I like that.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
I will say the holding penalty of 10 yards is usually one of two things: either exactly right or way too aggressive, kind of like what you're saying, Derek, where sometimes it has no impact on the play whatsoever, and they just called it, and that's the worst.
Yeah, it's just it's such a brutal penalty, because it has that and defensive pass interference are the two penalties that you can completely control a game with. Yeah. And they just have such an disproportionate impact on the game for what they are. And granted, sometimes a defensive pass interference is stopping a 50-yard play. So yeah, I mean, I get it, but and how
they're also grossly subjective.
Exactly. Yeah, the adage is that you can call holding on every play. So the fact it's such a drive killer is always so gutting.
Yeah, I just saw a flag get thrown in this game, and I saw holding, but it wasn't that. It was a flag with something else downfield. So, yeah, it's exactly what you were saying, Derek. I was when he was saying it's every play, I was is there going to be holding on this one? Yes, of course.
Yes. I mean, it's but that's the game, right? That's the game. Yeah, all these guys are playing. So, yeah, they got to clean that up. That's definitely an easy way to lose football games. You shouldn't.
Let's talk a little bit about this defense, though. I mean, I feel like we've spent a lot on the offense and the special teams,
but the
which
2 point,
understandably so.
The 2 point. I just
want
to. I want to say one thing about
2 point.
All right. I here's the thing about the 2 point conversion. Okay, it's all a Tomlin discussion. So Tomlin gets that timeout in, and you see that it's a QB power right. Then the Ravens decide that they're going to change the play and go to the left, with every receiver going to the right. It was blown up at the point of attack. Nelson Aguilar misses the block. Some have said if he makes the block, it's a walk in the park for Lamar. Okay, fair enough. However, I think the thing that's really telling from the Harbaugh presser is that he's well, because people were why wasn't Derrick Henry on the play? Why were you had Nelson Aguilar and Tylan Wallace out there instead of Zay Flowers and Bateman or Likely, right? And he's well, we have personnel packages for the certain plays, and I was that's why it was doomed to fail, because me as casual Ravens fan with the podcast has identified that these particular people are in on run plays, and I just I was okay, they're running the ball, and okay, who could possibly be running the ball of these players? Probably Lamar Jackson. So it's just follow Lamar, and that's what they did. And he's going to his left. He's less effective throwing to the left for obvious reasons. And it's just there was no outs too. There was no clear receiver option. I was just what is this play? It had one way to succeed. I think that's a very bad kind of play.
And kind of the worst way to succeed. I mean, running outside is it's never a given. And yeah, you're right. I mean, no passing option is honestly I feel every 2 point play should have two ways that a player can get it in. And,
yeah,
and
if it's
a design pass, Lamar Jackson's one of the best scramblers in the world, then he has the option to the defense doesn't just have to key in on him for that play. So yeah, I mean, not impressed with that 2 point play call.
Yeah, and I mean, I apologize if you already said this, but it's like, you're playing a very good defense, one of the top defenses in the league this year. Like you're saying, you want Mark Andrews out there. You want Derrick Henry out there. I mean, yeah, if we're talking about, Lamar scrambling to his left, that's what, that was what the 2-point play was against Cincinnati the previous week that worked. But what did you do on that play? You had Derrick Henry out there. You had Mark Andrews out there. You faked the ball to Derrick Henry and then had Lamar roll out. You had options there. You had the defense had to key in on multiple players, not just Lamar and, the backups. So, yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, it's just like, I don't have a problem with the Ravens putting together a play that looked like it had a chance and they don't make it. And it's like, okay, Steelers, they played well. We played well. Right. They were just slightly better. But when we can't put out a play that even gives them a chance, that's when the loss is incredibly frustrating. So
C-tier play with B-list personnel. And then it's just like, what are you doing? Like, I want A-tier. That's it. Like, it's 2-point play. You're only going for it if it's important. Like, no one's like as pilled as I am about just doing it every time just for fun. Like,
I do think it's impressive that they were even in that position though, given how that drive went. Like, to come back from that Aguilar play getting called back.
Yeah,
and still being able to put together a touchdown drive.
That was an incredible catch by Aguilar. It's so crazy. For years, everyone made fun of him about his hands, but he has made. He doesn't make them often, but he has made some incredible highlight reel catches in his brief career as a Raven to date.
Yeah, no, I know that was a great catch, a gutting penalty for it to be called back. That I felt like that was it, and then they were still able to kind of rebound and put that drive together against a really tough defense. So just to get in that position, like I people say there are no moral victories or whatever. That's a huge moral victory to me, is to even get that they were even in a position to call the worst 2-point conversion that they could have.
Yeah, the defense too is the major moral victory of the whole show or the whole game. And Peter wanted to talk about it, so let's talk about it.
Did I steal like a moral victory segment?
We don't really do them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Not because we don't believe in them.
Yeah, I think, it was a fun little segment that got born out of the 2019 season when losses hardly happened. And we were all just like, la, 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 down the yellow brick road to the Super Bowl. And then, it's kind of been we've kind of dialed back on it. But I mean, look, there are no moral victories in the NFL. We've heard the coaches say that all the time. But we're not coaches, we're fans. I think we've got to give a ton of credit to this defense. First time not allowing a touchdown in a game. You have to go back to week 9 last year against Seattle. And obviously this defense just got annihilated on Thursday Night Football. Jamar Chase is still scoring touchdowns. Even against the Chargers, he was still scoring touchdowns against the Ravens secondary. It was that bad. But look, I mean, the Steelers, they're not one of the better NFL offenses in the NFL, but I think they're solid. I think at this point we've seen enough of them with Russ and Najee that, they're limited in some capacity, but they've got talent. They can move the ball. George Pickens is having an incredible year after a slow start to his career. I believe I was checking this morning, and he's in the top 10 in receiving yards in the NFL currently. Let me I'll double check that while I continue to make my other points. But I mean, Najee Harris is really having a fantastic year for them. Russell Wilson has a lot of success here. Oh, man, number 3 in the NFL. Number 3 in the NFL in receiving yards. George Pickens currently. Zay Flowers is 1 yard behind him. And only Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase more receiving yards in the NFL right now than George Pickens. Fascinating stuff. But, I mean, look, their offensive line, not the strongest. Pass rush in the first half, very strong. Second half, not as much. I thought I was going to get my bold prediction there with those 4 sacks in the first half. We did not get to 6. But still, keeping him out of the end zone, forcing that turnover. Marlon Humphrey continues to have an amazing year. Marcus Williams, unfortunately, doesn't look like he's part of the equation. Pains me. We gave him a lot of money, and he had, played well through some injuries. Just not working. Just doesn't seem like it's going to work. But look, a lot of good things happened here, and hopefully this unit is starting to figure out the right personnel, right things that are working, so can really help the offense out when they have these off days like they did yesterday.
What a bonkers situation it is for Marcus Williams, a guy who I felt confident enough in the offseason to put a very small bid on and end up winning a signed jersey. I don't know what I'm going to do with that now. I like the Stanley one, though. The Stanley one was a great addition, particularly after the year he's having. But anyways, pretty crazy turn of events. The analogy I've been using, the somewhat steal or twist one that Jason from All the Films has used talking to me about it, is the Ravens fixed their leaky roof in order to, or instead of adding an addition to the house. And kind of like the rationale is, the back end was horrible. The safety room was horrible. They put Kyle Hamilton to go fix it. In addition to Darius Washington, who deserves a ton of credit as well. And they lose the optionality of Hamilton at the line of scrimmage as often as he once was. However, Marlon Humphrey is really good in the slot as well. He can also blitz quite well. Like, he has a lot of similar, big play ability from the slot. So then it's like just a question of who's playing the extra corner role. Well, we said, play Wiggins more. He's playing quite well. Like, ride the rookie. And then Tre'Davious White comes in, and he only played in 37% of snaps, but he usually came in to replace Stevens, which is a pretty obvious thing in retrospect. Like, who's the struggling corner on the team right now? It's Stevens. Comes in and has some good pass defenses, looked solid. And the question is, Harbaugh mentioned in his presser that he'll have an expanding role. Like, does he get the starting job eventually? I think it's on the table. So, very interesting to see what happens with Tre'Davious White. And then the follow-up question would be, okay, like, if Tre'Davious is playing more corner, like, does Brandon Stevens want to see the field? Do you want to consider safety? I don't think that they're actually going to do it. I think they'll continue to use the personnel that they have. But yeah, it's super interesting that this is the approach. And in this one game sample, it looks like it could be a really big solution going forward. Hope to see that it continues to work, particularly against the Chargers team that I think will challenge it. So, it's like we have a good opportunity coming up to see. Crazy, like I was alluding to, is like, A. Jackson doesn't travel with the team. No one's talking, or no one will say what happened there. Harbaugh didn't want to talk about it post game. He didn't want to talk about it today. He said it's in-house issue, but he did not talk about it the same way he talked about Marcus Williams. So I don't know. At least with Marcus Williams, they're saying that he's going to play meaningful football. He's going to be back, blah, blah, blah. None of that's happening for Eddie Jackson. So I feel like that experiment might be very much over. I guess we'll see with future inactives, etc. And then, man, I don't know. Like I said, Marcus Williams, like, I don't know, short of injury, how he gets back on the field at this point. I don't know if they're going to even attempt it. So it's just sad. I don't know what happened to him, and I hope that he has like a career. I mean, I'm sure he's going to get cut. Forgive me for talking about like the next year, but like, he's probably going to get cut. And like, what's going to happen to him next? I don't know. Probably someone's going to take a gamble, but not for much. It's just a really sad thing that happened. And particularly, like you said, Peter, he played like such a warrior last year through injury and like managed to be successful. Like, what the heck happened?
And we can't forget, that playoff game against Cincinnati, that's infamous for the Tyler Huntley play. You just need to call it the Tyler Huntley play. Everyone knows what you're talking about. Marcus Williams was huge in that game in keeping the Bengals passing attack from making big plays and, keeping the Ravens in that game without Lamar Jackson. It's just strange, man. And I know last year some fans were, scapegoating him a bit. Maybe that's a little in bad faith, but there was starting to be some chatter among the fan base of his play declining a bit. I didn't see it. I still don't see it when I go back and look on the film from last year, but he's this year, without question. Just something's not going right. I don't know. And I feel like, early in the season, we're talking about the scheme, but there's been some players on this secondary who've had some incredible seasons right now. Kyle Hamilton is having an incredible season right now. Marlon Humphrey, like we talked about earlier with the interception, he's been his old all-pro self this year after, a little bit of an injury struggles last year. Wiggins, after a shaky start, has really been making a lot of big plays and locking down receivers, particularly these past 4 weeks. But you got guys like Stevens and Marcus Williams who are struggling. So at this point, I don't know. I don't know. It's just something we don't have access to. You know, maybe if we were in the meetings, maybe if we were watching practices, we'd understand what's going on, what's different from this year than last. But yeah, I think at this point, where what we can see, these are players who've had success in the NFL before, and just aren't right now. And it's confusing, but the Ravens have some guys who can step up and give it a shot, and they've got their opportunity now, and hopefully they're able to take full advantage of it.
Could it be as simple as the defensive coordinator change? Like, do you think that would have that big of an impact?
It might,
On
but I
some
guess
guys?
that's what I was saying is
Yeah.
like early in the season, I think there was that theory, but we've seen Marlon Humphrey and Kyle
True.
Hamilton and Wiggins kind of, you know, figure
better.
things out.
Yeah.
And maybe the scheme plays better to their strengths and it doesn't to Williams. That's certainly
Maybe.
possible
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know,
I just like don't think it's that dramatically different of a scheme. I don't know, like because yeah, I think they're doing the play mix is not as good. But in like, for lack of better words, like neutral plays, where they don't really do anything other than just play the play. Like they're basically they're not trying to do anything deceptive, or they're not trying to do anything crazy. I think in those moments, like that's when he's been just subpar. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for what it's worth, like Roquan's not playing quite as well. He's now hurt with a hamstring injury. No updates on that. So we're just like dealing with linebacker play that's not quite as good. Like he's not as good as Queen. Like Simpson's not quite as good as Queen last year. He's playing quite well, but not that well. And yeah, it's just like a little bit of fall off there, and the safeties have to pick up the slack, and they're having a little bit of fall off too, and it's just been tough. Shall we talk about the Chargers?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So with great happiness maybe for Derek and for Peter rather, and not Chris, well, Chris who's not here right now. Devoa is now like behind a paywall other than top level Devoa. So I can only reference the top level Devoa, which is 9th for the Chargers. Pretty good. 90% chance of making the playoffs. Pretty good. And yeah, it sounds like we're going to be fighting for potential wild card seeding. I think it's a big game.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Ravens' next 2 games. They get, at the Chargers, which it's a home game. They'll travel well for that. But then a home against the Eagles. The Eagles are playing well. I mean, the Eagles look pretty good. So these next 2 games going into the bye week, that's the difference between you could be 9-4 and just really feeling good about getting in the playoffs, or you could be 7-6 and battling it out with teams for a 6 or 7 seed. So yeah, 2 huge games against 2 tough teams coming up for the Ravens. But I don't want to get too far ahead.
Yeah,
let's talk about the Chargers right now. But going into the offseason, what do you guys think?
Man, yeah. Dobbins was on a 1-year deal, right?
I think so. Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah,
it's looking like
I think Edwards. Yeah. I think Gus also.
Yeah, he might be done. Unfortunately, that pains me so much to see the year Gus has had. I love Gus, as I've said several times on this podcast. Just undrafted free agent, just did everything right and had a great career in Baltimore relative to expectations. And yeah, just injuries, I guess, have caught up to him, man. And it's just it's brutal. But Dobbins is having a bit of finally being healthy. It's finally healthy. And man, had the what would end up being the game-winning touchdown in this game that just happened last night that I fell asleep on. But I woke up to find out that he did have an amazing run to win the game.
Yeah, that was a good game. I also could not stay up for it. I was feeling quite unwell and just gave up. So I actually watched it today for some prep. And man, what a barn burner. They were up by a lot. Then they let a huge comeback in a quarter, and then it became a very tight game in the last quarter of the game. So very, very fun to watch against a team in the Bengals who is a 10% chance now of making the playoffs, which is unfortunate, I would say, as far as they're clearly a good team. They just keep losing these tight games. Yeah. They are me in this one fantasy football league where I am second in scoring and somehow out of the playoffs as of right now.
Well, it's the Chargers had a season, I think it was 2008, 2009 where they were number one. They had the number one defense and the number one offense and missed the playoffs. That's not really what the Bengals are doing because their defense has not been good. But
Right.
yeah, their offense is playing really well. I think they missed 2 kicks in the fourth quarter, right? And that could have put them ahead. So yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, it's the Harbaugh Bowl, of course. And these two teams, I feel like the Chargers and the Ravens are kind of like the Spider-Man meme, kind of pointing at each other because it's a bunch of former Ravens on the Chargers. They play kind of similar like football that's I personally find difficult to watch. So it's it should be an interesting game from that perspective. A lot of familiar faces on both sides, including two brothers playing each other. How many what Harbaugh Bowl number is this? How many times have they faced each other?
Third, right?
No, there's been at least 3. There was that Thursday night game in 2011, the Super Bowl, obviously, and then the Torrey Smith revenge game in 2015.
Okay,
so it's probably fourth. It's probably the fourth one.
Probably the fourth, yeah. Yeah. So
wow,
this is third. They will face off for a third time
in the regular season.
Yeah,
they definitely have. Okay, hold on a second.
Was it just Jim Harbaugh still game?
Was Jim Harbaugh still coaching the Niners in 2015? Okay,
I think he was gone. Yeah.
That's where I was. I thought he was still there in 2015. Okay,
so yeah, mind. it's just that Thanksgiving game. I think it was Thanksgiving, and then
it was Thanksgiving, yeah,
and then Super Bowl, and now this one, which is weird. It's weird they didn't. I mean, I guess in AFC and NFC they didn't play as much. Now we'll see them. Now they'll play each other.
Oh man. Well, now I'm gonna have to change my whole score prediction, man, because I thought I was driving into work today, and I was thinking like, man, it's a good thing that Jim doesn't need his Super Bowl revenge because he got that in 2015. Now I gotta have the Super Bowl revenge game for Jim Harbaugh and the bullshit revenge game for Greg Roman, at least from his perspective of all the fire Greg Roman takes. Doesn't matter if it was warranted or not. Just matters from what his perspective was.
Derek, did you ever see the fire Greg Roman paper that was found like on the Ravens facility, and then like then Raven Tyus Bowser like took a picture of it and put it on Instagram?
No, but I sure would like to.
Yeah, it was like a whole thing. Like they found it like all over the complex, and like it's a guarded thing, so like the assumption is that some player did it, and I'm sure they know who it was. Like funny. From I'm sure that's just an in-house issue.
That would be.
That's so funny. And he's like, "Fine, I'll sign the contract. No one else wants me." The feeling was not mutual. I love you.
I will say, and
there is no proof that it was Dobbins. We're not spreading false rumors here. Our podcast is going to blow up. We're going to see a headline from Chargers media. Dobbins.
Nobody reads Chargers media. Nobody's reading Chargers media. That would not be blowing up. But Dobbins would be more likely, I think, to record a diss track for Greg Roman. That would be his medium for dealing with that. But I mean, the Chargers offense looked great last night. Like Justin Herbert, he looked like. I mean, that's maybe the best that I've seen him
slinging it
in his career. Like he just looked like free. Like that's the only word I can think of to describe it. He just seemed to be playing like to his full potential in a way that I feel like the training wheels have been on a little bit up to this point, and I last night really felt like the passing offense kind of came to life, and that could just be facing the Bengals, but the Ravens also have not had a good statistical pass defense this year either. So I'll be excited to see that matchup.
Yeah, me too. I definitely think like. I was curious to hear you say that you didn't like what they're doing on offense, like it's hard to watch or whatever. I thought Giro looks like much better in this version of his offense, but maybe what do you think?
I think they're easy. I think they've like gotten better each week. It's definitely still that like you never see third string tight ends get more play than when it's a Greg Roman offense. So that's always frustrating. But they also have a just really inexperienced receiver core that I think is really starting to come on. I mean, Quentin Johnson even is playing.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like he looks like an NFL wide receiver, which I don't think anybody saw coming. Lad McConkey looked incredible last night. Made a really clutch play on that.
His helmet is so large relative to his head.
tiny tiny lad. Yeah, and I mean the running game was not super efficient last night, but the play that mattered was that touchdown at the end where Dobbins broke free and was able to make a play. So yeah, I think they're putting Herbert in some good spots to like use his athleticism in hopefully a safe way, where he's not just throwing his body around. And I mean, he's making great plays with his legs. He's finding the open guys during a scramble drill. So I think that offense is kind of coming on. It's just like not. It's just too conservative for my liking. Just from like watching a football game, like it's just. But it didn't look that way last night. So we'll see. I not to tip my hand on like score prediction, but I just kind of feel like I just feel like this game is going to be kind of a grind, similar to what we just saw with the Steelers. But that could be wrong. But part of that's just the Chargers. The Chargers' strength has been their defense. Like, and I think they'll. I kind of expect them to have similar success to what the Steelers just did.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think you look at, in some ways, this is a very similar game to what the Ravens played last week. You got a team with a very strong defense, has a lot of talented pass rushers that can really wreak havoc, has guys in the secondary who's capable of making a play, and then an offense that is solid but kind of underwhelming, like you're saying. And they have playmakers, but they're not necessarily, on a say a Jamar Chase or T. Higgins level that you're expecting them to take over the game. They can, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't be shocked if Dobbins or McConkey go off and have an incredible game against this defense that look improved against the Steelers, but we still don't trust,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we just saw this game last year. Granted, these teams are both different in a lot of ways, similar in some ways. A very slow, very low scoring affair, which no one saw coming. Where Zay Flowers had that was the game winning end around, right?
Oh,
in
yeah.
that game. So yeah, we'll see. I agree with you though. I don't think we're going to be seeing a shootout here. I think it's going to be, old school football. And I mean, who knows Lamar better than Greg Roman, right? I'm sure he's going to have plenty of tips to give the defensive coaches there going into this matchup.
Well, at least when I was running the show, he will always do this.
That's right.
Maybe because the play had no other options, but he would always do this. Check them if the receivers are within 2 yards of one another.
Yeah, but no one knows Hayden Hurst like John Harbaugh. So
that's right.
And Hayden Hurst is clearly the centerpiece of a.
Sounds like he's hurt
offense.
though, right?
He is. Yeah, he was inactive this week. I don't know if he'll be back, but
Will Dissly of all people has really been. Man,
Dude,
I picked him up on
the Athletic Football Show called it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, people have been calling. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that Dissly. I mean, even going into the season, Dissly was projected to like be the guy.
That was the number one pickup, bro. Like that was the craziest thing. They had like basically no cap room or whatever, apparently, and they were like, "Will Dissly is who we need," which is nothing more Greg Roman and Harbaugh-esque to be like,
right?
A 28-year-old tight end,
journeyman tight
end. Yeah,
he is the keystone of what we want to do.
Yep, we couldn't get Colby Parkinson, but I got this other guy.
Incredible.
Oh man,
truly. Well,
so yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a higher scoring game personally, but maybe that's just me like expecting both quarterbacks just to persevere.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, given how kind of the Ravens' pass defense has fared in a lot of games this year, it could be a scenario where the Ravens are kind of chasing points a little bit, and that could get the score up a little bit. But both these teams are also very capable of just completely taking the air out of the ball and playing a low-scoring kind of a grind game. I think that type of game would benefit the Ravens, though. I think they.
Wow.
That's kind of how I would look at it. I don't know if the Ravens want to get into a shootout. But hey, I could be completely backwards on that.
So the only game expected to have more points by Vegas's odds is Detroit Lions versus the Colts, which is currently at 50.5.
Is the second highest total?
Yeah, so the Ravens are at 50,
That's funny.
tied with the Philly and Rams game, and with the Ravens favored by 3. So Vegas thinks that it's going to be a higher scoring affair. So
Ravens 3-point road favorites. That is.
Yeah. Well,
All
as
right.
we all know, it's
That's
a home game. So in fact,
Yeah, well,
actually,
true,
it's a neutral
true.
opponent.
Yeah, they don't get the, yeah,
Apparently,
it's a
too,
neutral.
it's like not 3 points anymore, like under the books.
Has it
Like
moved?
it's more like a point and a half now, apparently. Legend says. I wouldn't be surprised if home field advantage is scaled based on team, not just like their
Yeah.
historical performance, but like how much of a home field advantage are you actually gaining? Like I went to the Atlanta home game, and I'll tell you, not much. Like it never got that loud. It just didn't.
That's
like,
definitely quantifiable too. Like you can look at data.
Like
for
there's
that.
travel, obviously, so like that's a
Yeah.
baseline, right? And like for instance, like I spoke about this in my notes. Like they're going across the country. It's yes, it's a longer rest period, but it is a cross country situation. Harbaugh's been really good. Which one, John? John's been really good about getting his players ready to play for primetime games. We are historically very good in primetime games, so I would hope those all play in the Ravens' favor. But yeah, definitely a game where it's easy to talk about the offense and how like Greg Roman, J.K. Dobbins, these receivers that are picking it up, how they're doing well. But what I saw when I watched the game was a swarming defense, and I was thinking to myself, like, how did they score so many points? Like, how did they come back so quickly? The Bengals, typical Bengals things: turnovers, breakaway play by Chase, just like the stuff that they'll just do to you. It doesn't matter how good you are.
The worst punt you've ever seen.
Yeah, just cheat code stuff. Basically, like they put in a cheat code and suddenly they scored 7 points. Like that's how they came back. This defense was swarming. They have star players. And Derek, like I wanted you to talk about their very strange stats when it comes to quarterback pressures.
Oh yeah, it's very strange. They are near the bottom in quarterback pressures on the season. Let me pull that up. And despite that, they're 5th in sacks, which is it just doesn't make sense to me. How a team that on a per play basis is among the worst in putting pressure on a quarterback is like near the top in sacks. And I don't have an answer for why that is happening. I mean, if you look at QB pressures, the Ravens are 4th in QB pressures, and they have 35 sacks and they have 100 pressures. The Chargers have 62 pressures. That's 30th in the league, and 34 sacks. So they have one fewer sack.
That's crazy.
Than the Ravens on 38 fewer pressures. Doesn't make any sense. It's just a level of efficiency that I don't know if it's. I mean, I can't imagine that's sustainable. They also blitz not very often. 19% of plays they blitz. So yeah, I mean they're just getting pressure with the front four, and when they get to the quarterback, they are sacking them. But very strange. It just seemed like a weird anomaly that I didn't understand.
It's baffled all the greatest minds. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, the defense is interesting. Certainly a lot of young players. I mean, there's certainly some players that fans certainly, have known, I think, who have made a name for themselves in this league at this point. Guys like, obviously, Khalil Mack, although he's having a bit of a down year, Derwin James, and it's Joey Bosa is the Bosa on the Chargers. But yeah, a lot of upcoming players too who are having a good year. And I mean, you watch this defense play, like they're fast, they're aggressive in the secondary. I think this is going to be another time where the Ravens might not have the same success that they usually do with, Lamar running around the pocket, trying to get guys to improvise downfield. I could see that being an issue. But also at the same time, I think another thing with this defense that is interesting is, and this isn't to take any credit away from them, but this was really the first good offense they played this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at who they've played. I mean, Vegas, Carolina, Pittsburgh before they got their stretch. This terrible offense called the Kansas City Chiefs. The Denver Broncos before Bo Nix became Patrick Mahomes. Arizona, New Orleans, Cleveland, Tennessee. Not very good offenses here. I kid a bit with Kansas City. That's probably the one good offense they had played before this game against the Bengals. And to their credit, they held them to 10 points. But I think that this is going to be, as much as this will be a test for the Ravens offense, it's equally a test for this Chargers defense to prove that, they're not just a team that's beaten up on a lot of bad offenses. They really do have this talent, and they can knock out, it's still crazy to say this, the number one offense in the NFL. I still don't believe that that's really what the Ravens are, because they're never this, even with Lamar.
Yeah, it's definitely a big game for the Chargers to kind of prove that they belong amongst the AFC elite, and I'm not sure that they do. To be totally honest, like they haven't really beaten. I mean, their most impressive win to this season is probably against Denver, maybe against Cincinnati last night, but Cincinnati's record's no good. So like, this is their biggest game to kind of show that they are a legitimate playoff contender, and deserve to be there. And then I guess this is a function of I think they finished last in the division last year, so they have a pretty easier schedule with some of those interdivision matchups. So the rest of the year they get Ravens, Falcons, Chiefs again, Bucks, Broncos, Patriots, Raiders. So their schedule isn't hard at any point in this season. But if they want to kind of show that they are this good, they need a good showing against the Ravens, and it could very well be a game where, the Ravens could humble them the way they humbled the Broncos. That's definitely within the range of outcomes for sure.
Yeah, I could kind of see that. I guess I don't know. I don't want to over-index one game that I watched recently and be like, no, they deserve, but they're good. But I feel like I wouldn't call them a top tier team, but I think they are a menace. I wouldn't want to play. Yeah, I wouldn't want to play them. Right, they're definitely a team that I think is competent enough to win a football game. They're as menacing as the Steelers at this point, in my opinion. Where I think they're well coached, they can win a football game easily against any team in the playoffs. Well, easily is a strong word, but you know what I mean. I think there's really no team it would shock me they beat, other than maybe the Chiefs, who probably will be the 1 seed anyways, but maybe not if the Bills keep doing things. I don't know. But yeah, it's just I think they're a reasonable team to upset basically any team other than maybe the Chiefs.
They're a team you wanted to have played in September and not November, I think, because they've definitely improved with each week.
They're on a 4-game winning streak right now. I believe that loss was to the Chiefs, so who knows how much longer it would be if they didn't have to play those guys. But they're in their division, so they will play them, and they might be in second place for a while because of that. The other thing that's interesting is I don't know if you have any context on this, Derek. Joey Bosa missed some games this season, and he's not even listed as a starter, which I thought was really strange. But he is getting limited snaps even in the games that he's returned in until last week, where he was at 67% of snaps. So it sounds like maybe he was getting ramped up a bit or something with his injury.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, I don't have a ton of information on that, but Tuli Paladu has played really well at outside linebacker, and I feel like Bosa has missed a lot of time throughout his career and has never really been that week in, week out game wrecker that his brother is, and that you would have hoped that he would be. But yeah, it could be a situation where he's getting back to 100% and we'll start getting more snaps for sure.
Yeah, it looked like one of those. It was 4 games that he missed, so maybe he went on IR, and then they brought him back, and we're like, well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's played. Yeah, last year he played 9 games last year. Started 5 the year before that. He played 5 games. He hasn't played double-digit games in a season since 2021. So
oh wow.
Yeah, it's kind of the story with him, and when he's out there, you just kind of hope he's effective, and maybe they're going to use him a little bit like the Bills have been using Von Miller, where he's more of like a
High leverage play.
third down, high
Yeah.
leverage. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. High leverage kind of player, just to keep him fresh, keep him out there.
Yeah.
Well, before we finish up with the defense, I wanted to know if you wanted to talk about any of these young up and coming guys, because I mean, you've got some guys who, at least from the outside looking in, and the little bit that I've had to look at the Chargers, who are having some, really looking like they're coming along. I mean, Tuli Tiapoluto, if I pronounce that right. He's up at 7 sacks. He was a second round pick last year. He's looking good. Morgan Fox, not to be confused with former Ravens long snapper Morgan Cox, has shown some flashes here. He's actually been around for a while. Who is this guy? I have never heard of this guy. Morgan Fox. Okay, he's been around for a while. He's not an up-and-comer, but he's having a decent season for you guys. Cornerback.
Hart.
Who's that?
Cam Hart.
Cam Hart. Yeah. Elijah Molden has had some impressive interceptions. So I mean, from your perspective, who are the young guys who are kind of stepping up and into their own here?
Yeah, I mean, a big guy on offense, Lad McConkey, has really come on strong and has. I mean, he feels like they might finally have a legitimate receiver they can kind of replace, Keenan Allen and I guess Keenan Allen was there last year, so it's not like it's been a long search, but like those were just huge shoes to fill. So to be able to have a guy that can be relied on in those big high leverage plays is huge. And Quentin Johnson also, it's been good to see him kind of break out a little bit this year after such a dreadful rookie season. They've used him, I think, really smartly. So on offense, it really is kind of a team of guys that other teams had kind of given up on, kind of coming together and having a good season so far. I mean, J.K. Dobbins on offense having, I think it's the best season of his career. I mean, like definitely. I mean, it's definitely the first. It's one of the seasons of his career, and so it's kind of a feel good team in that way, though. I mean, it's guys that coming into this year were kind of looked down on and kind of underdogs, and they've been able to put together 11 good weeks of football and are right there in the thick of it. And so it definitely a lot of guys to feel good about.
Nice.
Both on offense and defense.
Dude, I was just looking at this and it blows my mind a little bit. But Elijah Molden, I was like, I remember him. I liked him coming in the draft. He's a Titan. How did he magically become a Charger? Well, it turns out at the end of training camp, he was traded for a 2026 7th round pick. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He was a 3rd round pick, and I thought he played well. Like, I was like, he's not a bad player last I checked, ? Now, he did go on injury reserve and like lose a season in 22, but then he played 15 games last year, 8 starts, 73 tackles, a forced fumble and interception. Like, I don't know. I always thought he was still like playing well. I thought he played well in his rookie year or whatever. I don't know. So I was just like, for a 7th, that's it? More teams should be making trades like that. Stealing a good player for nothing.
I do think that this year's Chargers really like are putting in like relief, like the difference of having a good coach versus a bad coach, and what a difference that makes in the NFL. Like, honestly, this roster is probably less talented than last year's roster, and they're
way better.
Just absolutely blowing, what that team was able to do out of the water. So it makes such a massive difference. And Jim Harbaugh in particular, his 2 stops in the NFL, was able to take a team that was kind of year in, year out, not contending, not really living up to their potential, and in year 1 immediately turn them around. Like and whether or not that ends, with a Super Bowl or whatever, or sustained success, eventually the 49ers kind of started to flame out a little bit, and it became acrimonious between him and ownership. That's always like in play, but like his ability, he's done it now twice to just immediately turn the team around. You're seeing it also with Dan Quinn in Washington. He did the same thing when he went to Atlanta. So he's now doing it a second time. It's just that you can really just see a stark difference between someone who's able to come into an NFL locker room and get the most out of the players that are there versus, some coaches just never are really able to do that for whatever reason.
Yep. Oh man, yeah. And
These
also,
two teams are lucky to have hardballs, I guess, is what I'm saying.
And they have a great GM in our biased
That's true.
opinions of the right hand man of Eric DaCosta for all those years, and just a big part of the Ravens organization for all that time.
They're like sister teams now, or brother teams, I guess.
Well, literally. I mean, that's why. I mean, the GMs. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you get brothers as coaches, basically brothers as GMs, as far as like working brothers, like,
and then like all their coordinators are like, cast-offs of each other. Like it's the
inbreeding, man. It's incredible.
It's funny. That's why they call it like a coaching tree. It's like a family tree.
The first time we're going to say it, but Ravens West, we're playing them.
It is what it's like. Yeah. It's the East Coast offense. That's
Ravens throwback West.
Oh man,
West Coast throwback Ravens, whatever you want to call it. It's the Ravens of yesteryear.
Yeah.
Man, so that's just what an interesting team this will be. I guess it's time for the bold predictions and score predictions. We do have a bold prediction, hot off the presses from Chris. So I'll read that one first.
Breaking news.
And then we'll go to Derek. It's not that breaking. He says it before the show started, but
fine. News that broke when you weren't paying attention.
He says Dobbins and Henry will go for 100 yards rushing.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
No score prediction, but I don't mind it because score predictions are weird and difficult to do anyways. It's like, what is game flow?
How often do opposing running backs go for 100 yards against each other? That's a good question. That is what.
Well, how often do hardballs go against each other? Right?
That's true.
How high of the tee must be?
I'm gonna use my ADHD hyper focus on that for the rest of the evening and get back to you guys.
And this is what you could do if you had a bunch of people on medication.
Exactly. Yeah. So did he give a score also, or just a
score?
No,
100 yards. All right. Is it my turn now? Should I?
Of course.
All right, I'm gonna go with the score. Ravens 23, Chargers 19. Nice little weird score. 19 points. I don't know how they're gonna get there, but they're playing the Ravens, so it's gonna be a weird game. And then my bold prediction is that 6 tight ends or fullbacks will touch the ball.
I don't think they have that many active, bro.
Oh, I think they do. I was
looking at the depth chart, and it's only 4.
Well, okay, so
are you saying total?
I'm saying total between both
total
teams.
In the game.
Oh, okay,
between both teams. Yeah,
I buy that.
Yeah, because I think I joked last night over under 5.5, and I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna go 6. I think that's also gonna include a red zone target for Patrick Ricard if we want to get really granular with it.
Speaking of tight ends and fullbacks, we didn't talk about the Chargers have their own Project Pat right now, don't they?
They do.
The converted defensive lineman is now fullback.
'Tis the season.
Yeah. I know we're not here to talk about the Cowboys, but I've been, now that the season's over, let's get Micah Parsons the ball. Let's line him up in the backfield. Let's see Let's see what he can do. I think more teams should look into doing that.
Positionless football. I mean, that's what the NBA is now.
We got Travis Hunter coming into the NFL next year, and he might play both ways. I think. I don't know. Let's see it. Anyway, sorry.
Moving on. Make sports fun again.
Okay.
Cancel that. Never mind.
Whatever you say, Peter.
I don't know what I say. We were recording way longer than we usually do, and we're starting to get into my tired hours. Anyways.
That's where I am too.
It wasn't much later than this when I fell asleep on the game last night. So, and my back is still hurting. Thank you very much for asking. We didn't get to that at all.
Oh, is that what caused it?
Yes. Peter, you're 30. That's what caused it.
32, man. 32.
I know. I'm saying you're in the 30s.
Anyways, yeah, this game is going to be crazy. I think that there's so many fun storylines. There's just so much that both these teams do that mirror each other. I'm going to say we're going to have a 17-16 Ravens win. I'm really nervous about it. I could see this being a 2-game losing streak, but also at the same time, I think if the Ravens don't turn the ball over, they win against Pittsburgh, as good as Pittsburgh played. That's not meant to discredit them. They played incredible. I think the Ravens, if they held on to the ball, would have won the game. And my bold prediction in this is going to be, we're seeing the Ravens play a little better. Justin Herbert has not thrown a pick since week 2 against Carolina of all teams. He's going to throw 2 in this game.
Woo-wee.
All right. Will they be like Russell Wilson's pick in the end zone yesterday? Will they be that?
Might be
Horrific. I meant to mention that earlier. That was one of
Marlins had a couple of those this year. He had that one. He had the one against Bakers was the same thing.
Yeah.
He might have had another one if I can go back and think. He's had a decent amount of picks this year.
Yeah, he's been playing super well. So for my bold prediction, kind of, Peter, you kind of got me there. I was going to say secondary. It's going to be kind of a formation thing. I mean, I don't want to say Tre'Davious White has more snaps than Stevens, but that kind of feels bold. But let's see. You know what? Actually, I'll say this. I was watching their left tackle, Slater, who is known to be a good tackle. He seemed to be struggling last week, or against the Bengals. So with that in mind, and that Bozeman revenge game, I think they're going to be able to generate 5 sacks on Herbert. How about that?
5 sacks.
So you're stealing my bold prediction from last week and knocking it down 1.
That's right, because he's much more mobile than
5
than Burrow. Are you going to tell me that's
Russ Wilson last week?
How many times has he been? He's been sacked 23 times this year. Okay. Yeah.
All right. We're coming for him. All right. Very beautifully, because our secondary is going to be playing so well. So he's going to get sacked. He's going to throw picks. I mean, he's going to be so frazzled. How can they possibly not win?
Cleveland got to him 6 times.
All right.
And that's a game that the Chargers won by. They won 27-10 with Herbert getting sacked 6 times. He's been.
Wonder
sacked.
if there was any those bogus 0-yard sacks.
It was 6 sacks for 36 yards, so an average of 6 yards per sack. So there may have been. But all right, I think that's a good one.
All right,
I like it.
I think that's a good one.
Thanks for the research there, Derek. I appreciate it. That was more And for score prediction, the Ravens are favored by 3, like I said, and I kind of said I think the offenses are going to find a way to score points. What I'm seeing from the Chargers is an ability to create explosives. They're able to get big runs out of Dobbins occasionally. They're able to find Ladd McConkey in space. Like we said, Quinn Johnson decided that playing football and catching the ball was a thing he was interested in this year. So I could see how they have the explosiveness in order to score fast in some ways. So I'm going to say they score 21 points in this game. But the Ravens are going to manage to score 31.
All right.
Hit that over, baby. Just by 2.
Boom.
That I think would be the most. Yes, that would be the most the Chargers have given up this season. 20. The previous was 27 last night.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. That's good. Again, more research than I did as far as that.
I just have Justin Herbert's Pro Football Reference page up at all times. It's my screensaver. So it's just coincidental. I was able to give you both those stats.
Okay. A true fan. Derek, thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'll try to become a fan of another team you guys have down the stretch, and maybe we can. That'd
be awesome.
Maybe we can
please do. Can you just be a chameleon fan? We just call you anytime there's we don't have anyone else lined up.
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Very good. Awesome. Well, with that, you can find us on Blue Sky. We did it. We're so there. We're on Blue Sky now at onewinningpod.com. Yay for domain verification. Very beautiful. You can still find us on Threads. There's another app out there apparently still functioning. And then also YouTube. You can find us there. Like, comment, subscribe, all the beautiful things that you can do. Leave a review on your podcast platform if you feel so inclined. That'd be so neat. And we'll be back after the Ravens hopefully win on Monday night. I think we're going to record on Wednesday. So you can mark your calendars. Maybe you can listen to that instead of listening to politics on Thanksgiving. And we'll be back then. Go Ravens.